Alrighty then.
So, you kind of know what we're going to be doing here right now. We're going to have you pack a bowl.
Mm-hmm.
The way you do it, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to tell you how or why or anything. You're just going to do what you normally do in your natural state. So, we kind of explained earlier, but I'm just going to run through it again. I got the tobacco you wanted, the bowl.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to be packing it how you would normally if you were at home or wherever. And I'm not going to tell you what, or if you're doing anything that could be better, or you're doing something really well or something. I'm just going to let you go.
Figure it out.
Figure it out, yeah. And then we're going to smoke it.
Cool.
Aggressively critique it.
Okay.
Just kidding. You're probably fine. So, there
Bring it
you
on,
go.
dude. So, Tangiers being something everyone in the community likes to talk about, right? The big one is up until, let's say, 2 years ago, most people had the concept of how you pack dense, whether or not you use coconut coals. I normally do. Aspects are always mix the shisha first. I've never not seen it suggested to be not stored in a container like such. Mm-hmm. Shallow is better. If you use mason jars, you're actually an idiot for any tobacco. Sorry, not sorry, but you don't want the glycerin and the flavorings to separate from the tobacco. And that's why you do mix it. Now, I am going to preface, I don't pack in Tangiers bowls regularly.
That's fine.
So, my bowls don't use nearly as much tobacco, which is definitely something I think, at least community-wise, would be something of why some people don't understand perspective differences in how packing styles are, because there is such a common difference between, say, something like an 80 feet, which might hold 30 grams of Tangiers, and this, which is probably going to hold about 100, probably.
Something along those lines. I like to affectionately call them tobacco chalices or gauntlets because they're massive. Just before I had even worked here, I'd never seen a bowl like this deep, but you know, I've come to quite enjoy them.
Yeah, and I mean, there's their own differences in what you can get away with, right? Because what's dense in this isn't, because you're using so much more tobacco, is going to be different than what's dense in another bowl that uses less. I mean, something like an alpaca surrey that uses, that's what I normally would say I pack on when I am smoking Tangiers. It's like maybe 30 grams. Mm-hmm. And that's just a completely different animal.
Right, well, I mean, and if it's just you smoking, and you said like your sessions normally go for like 2 hours, mm-hmm. You don't need to have that much. So 30 grams, you get through the tobacco, it's done, and you don't have to worry about feeling like you wasted. Whereas here we do have a lot of traffic coming through. Just because you're done smoking a bowl doesn't mean someone else isn't.
It's more lounge style environments, or like, let's say even family environments mm-hmm. that you're looking at. And this fork is now dirty.
That is fine.
It's definitely it's a more of an express difference. Oh, don't get in the Spyre. Of what, like, that's the big commonality difference, is that most people have 1 to 2 bowls a day. They change their flavors. They're not sitting on the same flavor for the experience mm-hmm. of time that you would see out of bowls like these.
It's so just, I don't know, interesting watching someone use their fingers while packing.
So it's actually not something I normally do. I would normally use the poker with more shallow bowls. But the reason is that pokers, I mean, look at brands like, there's the Work Bund over there. Those have even themselves become accessories of expressed like premiums. But like, you look at anyone who is not using a fork or chopsticks or anything like that over the last few years, you were once using your hands. Hands are the best tool. It's the only tool that you were born with.
Here's a dick rag for you when you're done.
There's nothing wrong with using your hands as long as you're cleaning your hands.
Right.
Right, like paying attention to where you touch things. So this is where I would leave off, slightly under, right? Probably could be a little more even, but
Yeah, it's fine.
perspectives. And then foiling is also a major difference.
There you go.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, like, when it comes to Tangiers and stuff like that, I had a very limited experience with the brand before I started working here. It was sort of reserved as like a special occasion type thing when me and the boyfriend would be hanging out or whatever. And I remember the first time he brought it home and he put it in a tub, he explicitly told me, do not touch this with your fingers. Because normally when we were smoking other tobaccos, we would just kind of unceremoniously just reach into there and just throw it into the bowl. So just, I guess, watching someone use their fingers and stuff, it's very odd for me, just from a psychological standpoint.
So the big rule I always do is I'll use a fork to normally get the tobacco in, as I said, on smaller bowls, and then I'll use the poker to arrange the tobacco in the way that I want and tidy up the bowl. So I rarely ever actually do touch a bowl if I'm using something I'm familiar with at home. But that's always perspective, right? And I will, by all means, say, that, as I said, this is much larger than like what you have over here. So there is this oddity to me of nearly changing a little bit to adjust for the bowl, which a smoker would have to do regardless of the brand of the bowl they use.
Right.
One method I know for sure is that people like to use a fork, or at least you recommend a fork to a degree. And I am probably inept when it comes to using a fork in packing a Tangiers bowl.
It's alright, pokers make me nervous. I also sit there and stress out where each little hole is placed, so the fork just kind of helps me.
Well, yeah, it gives you that lineup, which is fine.
Because, I mean, that looks beautiful. I know I said I wasn't going to comment on anything, but I mean, that just looks pretty. But if I were to do this with a poker, it would just kind of look like it was stabbed 47 times.
The other thing is like pokers and the size of the holes, right? You at least look at the enthusiast basis, there are people who have 6 different hole pokers.
That's true.
Right, I don't usually poke holes this large because I use like a dental tool, so it's more narrow and it has a lower gauge or a different gauge. But yeah, that is where I would be.
Well, this is...
It's probably a little too much foil and it looks not too pretty, but
no, it looks, I've seen a lot worse, so you're fine. I think this looks pretty. This looks pretty, and I'm kind of curious to see how this is going to smoke. So
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.